In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest NHL trade talk. We're looking at the Maple Leaf goaltending situation. Also looking at the goaltending situation with the Washington Capitals. When will Phil Kessel be traded, and what is the asking price for the veteran winger? As well, could we see Patrick Kane actually moved either before the deadline or in the offseason? We have news from the waiver wire, some injury updates, news on a new Stadium Series game, and some unfortunate news on one of the top prospects for the upcoming draft. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss here today. Let's get started first with the news from the NHL waiver wire. Yesterday we had Buddy Robinson from the Ducks on waivers. He indeed did clear. And today we have Winnipeg Jets placing Austin Pergansky on waivers. So, of course, we'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. More than likely he does clear, but we'll get the confirmation of that tomorrow if he can be reassigned and go from there. Some injury updates. The Washington Capitals have kind of been hit hard by the injury bug here. They had a bit of a freak accident with Carl Hagelin, suffer an eye injury, which is going to require surgery. He's out indefinitely right now, but they are getting back Anthony Mantha, who's been out for some time as well. And the Blackhawks also have finally officially activated Tyler Johnson, as well as Jonathan Taves from IR as well. So certainly some guys coming back in that sense. And we also have got news today on a new Stadium Series game. We knew the Carolina Hurricanes were going to be involved with one next season. Their opponent will be the Washington Capitals. They will be playing the Stadium Series game February the 18th, 2023 in Raleigh, North Carolina. So that should be an interesting matchup. Of course, those two teams have been in the same division for some time. Decent rivalry. I believe they've had some playoff matchups as well. So certainly, hopefully it goes over well. It'd be nice to see an outdoor game in that part of the NHL landscape. Of course, the Washington Capitals have been in a variety of these, including a couple of Winter Classics and another Stadium Series game in the past. So it'd be nice to see the Hurricanes get an opportunity here in that regard as well. Signing to announce here, the Edmonton Oilers, of course, who announced a bunch of signings yesterday, kept the band going here and signed Seth Griffith to a 2-year, two-way deal. Of course, he's been a pretty good piece of their American Hockey League team in Bakersfield, so not somebody who's likely going to get a ton of NHL opportunity, but he's been a good pro, somebody with a decent amount of experience, who's been quite helpful in putting up some good production in the minor league, so he's certainly worth keeping around. It will be one of the higher paid American Hockey League players over that 2-year time frame. Now, as I mentioned as well, we also got some unfortunate news regarding one of the top prospects for the upcoming 2022 NHL draft, and that is Russian prospect Ivan Miroshnichenko. Now, unfortunately, he's been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, so he's going to be out for the rest of this season. There is concern he could miss part of next season as well. I guess the good news is for this type of cancer and disease that there is a very high rate of people getting through this, especially in their younger years. And it's the same condition that Muriel Lemieux battled in his NHL career as well, and he wasn't out too terribly long. So certainly we want to wish him the best in the recovery. Apparently he's in Germany. It's where he's going to go through his treatments and everything. So a really unfortunate, sad news for a really young, promising hockey player. So we certainly hope he can get through everything. And I know there's a lot of talk and questions. Is this going to impact his draft stock? Will teams shy away? Of course, being Russian with everything going on in the world, you have to think that there's some concerns in that regard as well. But we don't know how teams are going to approach this. But I personally would say, because of the rate of people beating this is pretty high. So I would think that, the odds of him resuming his career and, being the player that everybody thinks he's going to be are very, very good. I think that the odds are in his favor for sure. So I would be surprised if his draft stock is impacted a whole lot. But the other thing that you got to factor in here that is not so much just him. The other big factor here is that other teams and scouts are going to have an opportunity to watch other prospects more, and that might kind of skew their opinion in the ranking system. So it's hard to say. I would imagine he'll still be a first-round pick. I'd be quite surprised if he isn't. But the main thing for right now is his health and well-being, and hopefully he can get through all that and be just fine on the other end and resume his career in not too long a period of time. Now, of course, as we mentioned, we have a variety of NHL trade talk here today, including some veteran players that could find themselves on the move. I mean, we talked about a Blackhawks rebuild here a lot in the last couple of days, and I know Elliot Friedman's made mention in his latest 32 Thoughts column that the Blackhawks are definitely getting calls on Patrick Kane. Now, you have to think a lot of teams would be very interested in Kane, of course, who's got a long NHL career, very successful, still playing at a very high level, making a big income, obviously, which has a big impact on their salary cap, which is certainly not easy to take on, and he has one more year left. I think a trade at the deadline is pretty unlikely. In listening to his comments, because he was asked about this recently, now that they know who the new GM is and the kind of direction the team is heading, he didn't seem too fazed by it and seemed like it was kind of, a decent, cool idea for him to kind of finish out his career as a Blackhawk. So, doesn't mean for sure that he and Jonathan Toews don't want to stay. At the same time, you have to wonder from the team's perspective, and Kyle Davidson, does he want them to stay? Sure, they've been great ambassadors for that franchise and helped them have a lot of success, especially when they were a little younger and more in their prime years. But, at the same time, if he can trade them and help bring back a lot of pieces and assets for the future, then that's obviously would help the franchise out a lot more than just letting them play things out, right? So you have to wonder, just because they want to stay, will they? I mean, even though right now they do both have a no-move clause, so they do have control over that, and if they really don't want to leave, they can't be forced out. But, you think conversations are definitely going to be had, and I'm sure Davidson, if he would prefer to recoup assets and trade them, that those are conversations that they will have probably later on after the season. And at the same time, you have to think that if they're not kind of feeling that the team really wants them to move on, that maybe they'll find a way to accommodate that. But interesting to see that the Hawks are getting a lot of calls and inquiries now, and there's certainly interest. So can you imagine if they officially let it be known that Kane was available? I don't have any doubt that teams would be all over that. Like I mentioned, it's probably just a little bit of a fantasy thing, but to see him go to the Rangers to be reunited with Panarin, those guys too were magic in Chicago for a while. To me, that's a logical fit, but I don't see that happening ahead of the deadline. It would be kind of complicated, very tricky cap-wise, and I just don't see it happen. It's fun to think about, sure, but unlikely. So even though Kane is drawing a lot of interest, I highly doubt we'll see a trade before the summertime, and even then it's not a guarantee since he has full control, can make that decision to either block or to go along with the deal. Now, another veteran guy, Phil Kessel in Arizona, been waiting for a trade all year. He made it known to the Coyotes organization, even as the season was starting, even in the offseason, he would prefer to be traded and to finish out his contract somewhere else. Of course, he had a great relationship with former head coach Rick Tocchet, and you have to think after Tocchet left and the way the team has been playing, that he's really not interested in sticking around. Kessel definitely won't be re-signing in Arizona. I think that's fair to say for sure. Hard to say what his career will take him next, but right now the asking price that we've learned is likely looking at around a third-round pick and a prospect. I mean, he's not having a great season statistically. His numbers are certainly down, but he's playing on a weak team that certainly has not had a lot of success, and you have to think that's certainly playing a role. You get him playing with some top players like he was used to in Pittsburgh, and I'm sure his numbers would likely bounce back, at least some for sure. But for given all the experience he's got and number of playoff games and a couple Stanley Cups to his name, for the small asking price, you'd have to think that somebody will budge and bite on that. And even if the Coyotes have to change a little bit and maybe take a little less, you have to think Kessel goes somewhere, but it's been eerily quiet on this player, and now we kind of know why, what the asking price is, I should say. So you have to think that teams out there maybe just don't think that he's worth that, and maybe that it's a little bit too much, and they're hoping the price will come down. I guess that's likely where they're at, but it'd be interesting to see where Kessel ends up. He's been linked to a variety of teams before, but I don't think the interest has really been too serious. So we'll see where things go on that front. And a couple of teams looking for some question marks or to answer some questions ahead of the deadline when it comes to goaltending. And that's the Maple Leafs and the Capitals. GM Brian McClellan of the Capitals did acknowledge that going into the playoffs with his young goaltending duo, it's certainly going to be a challenge. We've seen Samsonov and Vanecek have, injuries and inconsistencies this year, and there's been a lot of talk. They were heavily involved with the Marc-Andre Fleury trade chat, but he seemed unwilling to waive his clause to go there. And he said even though he doesn't have a full no move, the Blackhawks are essentially treating it that way as like a de facto, no move where he can basically call a shot. And he didn't want to go to the Capitals. So certainly they have some other options. Maybe they bring back Braden Holtby, but Dallas is not out of the playoff picture right now. They've been clawing their way to stay in it. And if Dallas is heading for the playoffs, then they're not going to trade him. So that complicates that. And you look around, and there's a variety of NHL goalies out there that could be had, but where do they turn? It's very interesting to say. You'd think they'd want somebody with more experience if they could, and a lot of the other goalies that are rumored to be available are not, overly, experienced. There's a few, but not a whole lot out there besides some guys like Fleury, for example, or Holtby. So but the Capitals are very much likely expected to try to address the goaltending, and I wouldn't rule out one of these young guys getting traded. I'd be surprised if it was Samsonov, but I wouldn't be completely shocked at this point. It depends on how they feel about Vanacek. I mean, they might have an opportunity to do an upgrade. It just really boils down to what they can do, but I do think that they're going to at least seriously inquire and see what they can happen here. Now, when it comes to the Leafs goaltending situation, another article come out on NBC Sports this time talking about the goalie situation with Toronto and how they really should address this going to the playoffs. We've seen a lot of games lately where this has not been good. I mean, we had Peter Mrazek have an opportunity lately to take the net and run with it, and he failed to do so. The Leafs got embarrassed by the Buffalo Sabres in their last game. Did not look good in that regard. Rasmus Sandin had a tough night being paired up with Morgan Riley. That didn't go overly well, but the goaltending really seems to be the bigger part of the concern, because there seems to be more of a trend there than other parts of the team. So we've talked before about Fleury going to the Leafs, and this article really emphasizes that that's exactly what they need. They need the experience. The guy with the long playoff battles he's been through, the mental stability, to handle the pressure from the big market and kind of tune everything out, as well as the talent and skill level to get things done. So certainly, something that would be wishful thinking. I think it's going to be tough to do, but another interesting option, because they listed off a variety of goalies that they could consider besides Fleury, and one of the names that came up, which is he's actually having a really solid year, it would be an interesting player to see reunited in Toronto, would be James Reimer from San Jose. Now, of course, he doesn't have an expiring contract, so that might complicate things a little bit, unless the Leafs are willing to move Mrazek for Reimer. If that's a deal that the San Jose Sharks want to make, then of course that's something that they could look at doing. Bring Reimer back to Toronto after a long time away from the team. Obviously, at one point he was quite a popular teammate and fan favorite for quite a while. Had a good stretch there with some good teams that just could not get over the hump. And then once they start tearing things down before they went into the full-fledged rebuild, of course he's one of the many players that were shipped out out of town. So we'll see, but he's having a phenomenal year in San Jose. Considering the team in front of him isn't, tremendously successful, Reimer is another interesting option, but I'm not really convinced at this point the Sharks will want to trade him either. You have to think that their goaltending situation has been so unstable in San Jose for the last number of years. They finally got somebody there who's doing half decent. They also have Aiden Hill. They just brought Alex Stalock back as a number 3, and he's going to get a chance, actually get called up today as well after the trade from the Oilers to be the backup since Hill's on injured reserve. So, I'm not really sure they're going to be interested to make a move in that regard. But if they did want to pull the trigger on a Reimer trade, to me, the Leafs should be all over that. But it's not going to be easy, is the whole point of this conversation, to say that the Leafs want to upgrade. There's not a lot of options out there with a lot of experience. Fleury, if he doesn't want to go to Toronto, and if they can't make the money work, that might be just a pipe dream. And they might have to go into the playoffs with Campbell and Mrazek. And at this point, that seems really unstable the way they've been playing here over the past really almost 2 months. Campbell's save percentage since early January has been really, really bad. And, Mrazek hasn't been able to make it run with it here either. So one of them at least has to get on a roll for this team to really go into the playoffs feeling real solid and on stable ground and have a shot at finally making some noise in the playoffs. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.